So we are. Let's do a count-in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. For the benefit of everyone who is listening, I think we should probably say who we are. So, Elizabeth, who are you?
I'm Elizabeth Pienaar. I'm the Product Engineering and Support Manager for Sage CRM, and I'm based in Dublin, in Ireland.
That's great. No, I'm the Sage CRM head of training program development. There we are. I actually have to think what I am as well. But I work for you, don't I?
Well, you work for Sage as I do, but you report to me.
So is it? I've always imagined it would be amazing being my boss. Is it really good?
Oh, Jeff, I couldn't begin to describe it. So let's move on to CRM, shall we?
We should. So we've. It's fantastic that we've got your time to be able to talk about Sage 2020 R2 and beyond, and to talk a little bit about the process by which we're going to do development and how that's actually tackled. And I think that you might actually be mentioning a little bit about some of the dedicated resources that we now know we've got going into the future. But tell me about 2020 R2. What are the reasons that anyone should upgrade to 2020 R2?
I suppose the most important reason, and it really is a critical reason, is for anybody who is using Exchange Online, which they might refer to as Office 365 or Microsoft 365. The way that CRM authenticates to Exchange Online will change on the 13th of October this year. So we used to authenticate using basic authentication. That will be deprecated from the middle of October. So 2020 R2 includes the OAuth 2.0 authentication for Office 365. Any customers who are using Office 365 need to get this update. So we've put that into 2020 R2, and because it's such a critical update, we're also releasing a couple of patches. So if your customer has just upgraded to 2020 R1, we will release a patch for OAuth 2, so they don't have to upgrade again. We'll also release another patch for 2018 R3 for customers on that version, because there are a lot of customers on that version. But if you haven't upgraded recently, OAuth 2 is a really important reason to upgrade to 2020 R2. There are two others that I would mention, again, for specific customers. So customers using Mailchimp. If they've upgraded to 2020 R1, they will have noticed that it's now much easier to create groups from CRM because we handle duplicate emails. So Mailchimp is very strict about putting the same email address in the same group. If you have a duplicate email address in a group, Mailchimp will reject it. So we've made it much easier to find your duplicates in CRM, to prevent duplicate emails in your groups. And there are further enhancements to that functionality in 2020 R2. So from this version onwards, you'll be able to use the same email address for different entities. So you could have the same email address for a company and a person. And that's important because in real life, you very often do have the same email address for a company and a person. For a sole trader, they might only have one email address. So you're allowed to do that in 2020 R2, and that has no problems for your Mailchimp groups. The other important refinement is that if you do have duplicates, it's now much easier to find them and correct them. There's a hyperlink from the screen to go and look at the entity and update the email address. So that's an important update for Mailchimp customers. And the third one is support for Microsoft SQL Server 2019. We've had a lot of requests to support that version of Microsoft SQL Server, and that's in 2020 R2. There are also a number of bug fixes and little enhancements that people have asked for. It's very much a customer focused update to support customers and to respond to their requests and their bugs.
That's great. So that's great.
Yeah.
I just point out as well that in terms of the details of what's coming in 2020 R2 in terms of features and some of those, David Beard and I will be talking about that in another one of the sessions as well.
Yeah.
I want to drill down into a little bit about some of the changes that have been brought in with 2020 R2. These are changes that have been pushed in on us. So they're essentially environmental changes.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about the impact that, say, TLS changes have meant, and what actually? I wonder if everyone knows what TLS means.
Transport layer security. So there are only 2 versions of TLS that will be supported from now and into the near future. 1.2 is the standard. 1.3 is what we're working towards, and we will start supporting 1.3 as soon as Microsoft does. But for the last 4 versions, I think we have been supporting 1.2, but we now have to make sure that we have absolutely no reliance on 1.1 anymore, because browsers are dropping support for it. So we don't have a definite date for some of the browsers, and they're not coordinating their deprecation of TLS 1.1. But over the course of this year, only 1.2 will be the minimum version for TLS. So it's really important that we remain compliant. CRM has been around for many, many years, as you know, Jeff. We have to continue evolving. We have to maintain high security standards. We have to make sure that we are always compliant, because customer data, real people's data, is stored in CRM installations, and it's crucial that we remain compliant and we remain secure. So because TLS is such a fundamental part of CRM, you can't even install it without TLS. We've updated to 1.2, obviously, in 2020 R2. We released a patch earlier this year for 2020 R1, so that's been patched. And we have also released patches for 5 other versions of CRM. So from 2018 R1 onwards, there is a patch available to download to make sure that you are TLS 1.2 compliant. So I recommend those patches to everybody. We used 2020 R1 as the earliest version, because 2017 R1, 2, and 3 will be out of support at the end of September this year. So we didn't patch those versions.
Can I jump in on something else as well? Because I think we've those changes for TLS are very, very important, and I've noticed as well that it's not just a question of the browsers that are ending support for TLS 1.1, but also various operating system elements are as well. So we have to be absolutely certain. I think we went through quite a bit of a ruction, making sure that all the libraries that we use communicate correctly, and that even affected the install shield as well.
Yeah, for TLS, yes, it did. Yes,
for TLS,
yeah.
So that reflects the communication standards between connecting to the database, even as well. Now I'm going to there's another thing that I should probably mention. One of the reasons for updating. You mentioned that some products are coming to end of support in in the end of September. Is that right?
Middle of October, 13th of October.
30. Oh no, that was the OAuth
sorry.
2. I mean our versions of Sage CRM coming to the end of.
Start again, Jeff. Sorry, I thought you were talking about TLS.
I moving away from TLS. We've got we know that. You mentioned that 2017 is not going to be patched around the TLS side. That's coming to the end of life, isn't it?
Not end of life, end of support at the end of September. Yes.
Sorry, you're absolutely correct. Sorry. So end of support for Sage CRM 2017 versions. That's R1, R2, and R3.
Yes.
Another reason I think to make sure that we've upgraded is that Apache Adobe Flash is end of life in all browsers, I think, very soon, if not now.
At the end of this year, I think, at the end of December this year, yes.
And we moved over to HTML5 in the product in, I think it was 2017 R2. So all of the reports. So if anyone's using reporting with graphs, anything like that, then they're going to run into problems if they're still using 2017 earlier as well by the end of this year. So this is really quite an important year for upgrades, isn't it?
Yes. And one other thing that I would mention regarding upgrades, I get quite a few questions about security, about how we secure our data, about how we hash passwords, about how we transfer data and store it. We make continual improvements to the security of the product. We don't always talk about it, partly because we have customers on older versions and we don't want to highlight the fact that they might be less secure features in an older version when we know that there are customers still using it. But we do make continual updates to our security, to our encryption. We do a penetration test every 2 years. We act on the results of those pen tests. We mitigate any potential risks in the next maintenance release. So our last pen test was in 2019. There were no critical or high issues at all, but there were a few medium ones, and we did address them in the next maintenance release. So I would recommend that you keep all your customers up to date with the latest available version of CRM for security reasons, if for no other reason.
And the pen testing is carried out by an external
third party, yes.
Third party. So it is a question of strong validation and product, just to get that robustness and making sure that we're following the correct standards. And we haven't had to do it, I think, recently, but we do provide hot fixes for any critical security issues that might.
Yes, I think the last one was 2 years ago.
Was that the Heartbleed? That was, I think that might have been the Heart.
I'm not even sure. I can't remember what it was, but we did issue a patch for all supported versions. I think that was 2 years ago in 2018. Yeah.
Thinking about challenges from a development point of view, when we do make a change for things like OAuth 2, like TLS, how does that impact on things like the different libraries that we use within the Java side of the product?
Those changes were quite isolated. OAuth 2 and TLS were TLS more pervasive than OAuth 2, but OAuth 2 really just concerns the authentication with Office 365. So it's not. It's a fairly circumscribed change, if you like. We look at our underlying libraries periodically. We update them where necessary, and there are not only security issues there, but also functionality. So we do keep our software up to date. There's a lot to be maintained in CRM, but we do need to keep it compliant, and we do need to keep it secure.
Good. You mentioned we've talked about older technologies within the product. We've obviously talked about the need to make sure that we've moved away from TLS 1.1. I want to think about one of the oldest technologies that we use within the product, because we also have moved away from using Flash. What about Activex?
So Activex is another change that's been imposed on us to a certain extent by the change in Microsoft's direction away from IE and towards Edge, and they're dropping Activex. At some point in the future, we don't have a date for that, but we know that at some point IE itself will no longer be supported, and therefore Activex will no longer exist. So we have become increasingly independent of Activex. Document drop is the obvious example there. When CRM was first introduced, I wasn't here, but I understand that it only worked on Internet Explorer. That was the browser, and we've now become browser agnostic, which is brilliant. And Chrome is the browser of choice for most people. But there are still a lot of customers who are using IE, and one of the reasons that they was because there was certain functionality that only worked in IE. So the last couple of versions of CRM are far more browser agnostic, and you can now do almost everything in Firefox or Chrome, and you don't need IE anymore. For the only functionality that hasn't been ported, if you like, is send via Outlook, and there is no replacement for that. We cannot implement that in any other way. So when Activex is finally retired, that functionality will be retired as well. But everything else should work just as well on Chrome or Firefox now.
I just make the observation that I think only the latest checks that I made across Sage City and across the community indicated that our user base for Internet Explorer is at 5%, with 69% using then Chrome, with the vast majority, and now that Edge has moved over to using the Chromium engine within that, it represents a direction of travel. Do you imagine? Yes. Can you envisage us dropping Internet Explorer as a supported browser? We're currently supporting Internet Explorer 11. Do you think we should still bother to check it?
Our policy is to continue supporting a browser as long as the vendor continues to support it. So we support the versions of not only IE but also Microsoft Office, Microsoft servers that Microsoft itself still supports. When those go out of mainstream support, our support automatically ends. So we will continue to support IE as long as Microsoft continues to support it, and that is as long as they support Windows 10, I think.
Yes,
I think that's the plan.
That's what I understand as well.
Yeah.
Now, one of the features that depended on or depends on Activex is CTI, computer telephony integration. Now, we announced actually with Sage CRM 2020 R1 that we were going to be deprecating and dropping it from the product in this coming release, because it's the release that's coming up in 2020 R2. But we're not, are we?
No, we changed our minds.
What's happening there?
Well, there are a lot of people who are still using CTI, and although it is on the cards to be dropped from CRM, we don't want to remove it without having anything at all to replace it. So although we can't re-implement it with all the functionality it now has, we are looking at partner developed functionality that could at least provide some of the tools that customers are used to using. It is very old technology. It hasn't necessarily evolved as CRM has evolved. So it's not something that we can maintain indefinitely. But before we remove it from the next version of CRM, and it will probably be removed in 2021 R1, next January's release, we will have at least some of that functioning available based on what our partners have been doing.
Okay, so I would imagine the core behavior that we're going to be looking for in the future going in is the click to dial, so we can dial out using whatever device is implemented within the environment that it's being used. And I would guess as well that, well, I should actually refer people to check out Greytrix's presentation that's in the conference as well, because they're presenting on their CTI solution, which works with which is a brand new solution, which should be working with Sage CRM to handle the CTI needs as well.
Yes.
Okay, well, we are approaching, I think, the time limit for our little session together. So, Elizabeth, have you enjoyed this conference?
Of course.
Of course, yes, yes. It's not stressful, is it? Sort of talking to me like this. That's very good. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for joining us in conversation, and enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see everyone around.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Oh, there's a couple of things I should add in. The first thing is that if you've got any questions about the product, if you've got any questions about the direction of the product, then do go on to Sage City. I'll just flick up the site for that. So go on to Sage City. You've got the forums. You can ask questions there about the direction. We'll try our best to be able to answer the questions, especially about architecture and direction of travel. Also within Sage City, do go and look at the announcements forum. That's where you get any product advisories being added in. That'll tell you about the current support arrangements and or why we're doing certain things because of an alert about the deprecation of a third-party product, third-party bit of technology, for example. And have a look at this very, very useful page within Sage City. This is something that you should check out. This is the resources page. You'll see links here into your local operating company areas for getting support, being able to log a case, being able to look at the knowledge base, and basically find out about licensing as well and things like that. I hope this has been a good conference for you. Thank you very much.